Good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us here on the ice, brought to you by Dokes Fields Case Financial Group, Toby Hockey, and the Pilot Mountain Hockey Academy. Before we start tonight's episode, I want to make a quick comment with regards to tonight's topic. It is going to be related to the Hockey Canada allegations that have surfaced here in recent months, and a little bit of discretion will be required in this viewing. We will not be speculating anything. It'll be mentioning simply the information that has been made public by our national news as well as news medias across our great nation. We are going to be looking at the opportunities and what might we see moving forward, helping grow this sport and making this sport strong for everybody, not just those involved currently, but those that look to participate in future. So again, little viewer discretion is advised tonight as I welcome in my guest. He's been on the show several times as well. He's also helped me with some podcasts we did earlier this year and last year as well. A gentleman that I look up to and has his own commentary weekly on the Rod Peterson Show at rodpeterson.com. Mr. Mike Stackhouse will be joining me here on the ice. Mike, how you doing today, Mike?
Well, I'm fighting a bit of laryngitis. Actually, I got a sore throat, but otherwise, I feel fine. Just battling a sore throat and some laryngitis. So I won't get too fired up this evening talking to you. I'm gonna just kind of keep it really level.
We'll keep it level. I feel like tackling the issues in junior hockey is an understatement of what we're going to be doing tonight, because this is something that has resurfaced after it's been dealings with, and quote unquote, the word bumbling has been used, not only for the 2018 issues, but we are very aware about what occurred in London, Ontario after winning gold in Buffalo, but also more recent, some actions that occurred in Halifax during 2003. Very fluid situation, cases being reopened on both of them, and more investigations being done. But our focus isn't on the investigations per se. It's going to be more on talking what Hockey Canada has done and hasn't done. Mike, let's start off by asking the question of, and this is a quote from Hockey Canada, this is from one of the recent releases, ending the culture of silence in hockey. And Hockey Canada has certainly done some bumbling. Give me your perspective on it. Let me know what your thoughts are on these two matters.
Well, I guess, that's a nice thing to say, but if Rick Westhead hadn't come out with the stories that he's come out with in the last couple of weeks, would we be hearing this from Hockey Canada today? I don't know that we would. And so those are great things to say. I think you have to say them to satisfy the public. Time will tell, to see if they actually mean what they say. I think for me, through all of this is we're in a crazy time in the world where you're pretty much on trial and judged on social media. These guys in London aren't guilty of anything yet, but it sure sounds like they are. You know what I mean? When you read the news stories and go on social media and you get people's opinions. But the fact is that they're not guilty of anything yet. There's two sides to every story. I understand that culture of silence. I don't work in the media anymore. I used to be involved with major junior teams and junior A teams quite regularly. I can tell you that I'm also a party to that, staying silent. Now, having said that, I never witnessed a rape. I never witnessed a crime. I never witnessed anything like that. I witnessed and am aware of a number of stories that many of us would probably consider to be immoral, appalling, use whatever adjective you want, but I can also say that the stories that I'm aware of and the people that were involved all did it willingly. And so that's the muddy, um, that's what's muddy in all of this is what was consensual, what's not consensual. If you go back to the 2003 situation in Halifax, the details that are alleged, and they are fairly graphic. There was a video that apparently was taken. The video starts with one of the players outside a hotel room. That player is pretending to give an interview and answer some questions, and then he preps the viewers for what they're about to see, and he goes in the hotel room, and then the cameraman follows him into the hotel room, and what transpires after that, the female is unresponsive. So that's a crime, right? If that happened, that's a crime. That's rape. That's sexual assault. There's no defense on that. And if that happened, those players should pay the price on that. I find it hard to believe in all of my years of working with junior hockey that coaches and managers and people like that were unaware of that kind of behavior and what was going on. The junior coaches and general managers, I mean, they have their thumb on every off-ice move that these kids make. And I can only imagine at the world junior level that's magnified exponentially. The difficulty here then becomes, as managers and coaches, okay, you're aware of this immoral behavior that's going on. You've got 17, 18, 19-year-old boys, young men, taking part in this. You've got, I'm assuming, similar-aged females taking part in this. Is it up to you to put a stop to it if you believe that it's consensual? And I think that's the muddy part, the gray area, if you will, is how do you know what's consensual and how do you know what's not consensual? I mean, for us who are not involved in it, there's no way to know for sure. For those that are involved, that are actually involved in the act, they know full well whether it's consensual or not.
You mentioned the consensualness and the fact that this is a non-generational matter. This is not about presentism. This is not about judging something because it's changed over the course of a decade or two. I mean, granted, 2003 is almost 20 years ago. 2018 is just a couple of years past. It's not about generational issues here. This is about acts or alleged, acts that occurred, and Hockey Canada being lack involved for that matter, and trying to sweep it under the rug until now. And if it wasn't for some investigative reporting, we wouldn't know about it. And I mean, the fact that it was kept so quiet, was that done on purpose, do you think, by Hockey Canada?
Sure. I think it's done on purpose. So again, don't confuse with what I'm about to say with every single act of sex being illegal, because it's not. But the reality is, on every junior hockey team right across this country, and not just this country, but in Europe, in the United States, this is not uncommon. This is common behavior, and you can be appalled by it. You can be shocked. You can be outraged. You can be all kinds of things. But this is not uncommon. What is uncommon is the assault, right? The assault is what is uncommon. Now, is it right to disrespect a woman when Jordan Tutu says we're going to slay these broads? That's disrespectful. It's not a crime, but it's disrespectful. And you wonder if the woman knew that that's how she was being talked about, would she still participate in the act? Only the woman that's involved at the time knows the answer to that. But I think, we as viewers should be careful about what is immoral and what is illegal. And I think, I look at the baseball example, and I wrote about this on Rod Peterson's website today. Trevor Bauer, the baseball pitcher, by all accounts, appears to be innocent of any illegal behavior, but he's still been suspended for 2 years because he's got a very weird sexual fetish that I think most of us find appalling. And because we find it appalling, he pays a price for that. And, the discussion maybe should be around, who, for me, I don't care what anybody does behind closed doors. I don't care who they do it with. I don't care how many people they do it with. I don't, none of that matters to me. When it's not consensual, that's the problem for me. And I think that's also the problem with some of these people at Hockey Canada, and they're paralyzed by political correctness, and it serves them right because they've been politically correct for a long time, but they're paralyzed by being unable to come out and say, okay, you know what? The fact is that you're dealing with a bunch of alpha males on these World Junior hockey teams. They're highly desirable amongst teenage girls, and who are we as suits to stand in the way of whatever activity all of those people want to do? But yet, when it crosses a line and the woman is passed out, which appears to be the allegation in 2003, where she cannot consent, well, that's rape, and there is no defense to it. And so Hockey Canada, I think the people that are in charge, they get caught in, I think, they don't want to come out and say, well, hey, we condone whatever people want to do that is consensual, because they're going to get hammered for that too. Right? Are you saying that you're promoting teenage boys and teenage girls taking part in risky sexual behavior? Are you saying that you promote that? I mean, what's Hockey Canada going to say to that? But the reality is that, they got to decide what they will allow within the organization. And if even if that activity is consensual and all the parties agree to do it, if Hockey Canada says, you know what, we still don't want that as part of our organization, then the onus is on them to speak up and speak loudly and say that's not what we're about.
That's exactly it. And they've said the things publicly that are, they have to say. Obviously, they're not trying to. The feathers have been ruffled, so to speak, already. National programs, the Canadian government, groups like Scotiabank, TELUS, and Canadian Tire have already pulled funding from Hockey Canada, which unfortunately doesn't serve the general population and the participants that look to get involved in the sport. We've said a little bit here, and this is where we're going to conclude with here on this topic, the conclusions of what Hockey Canada can do and what can they do moving forward, maybe to not save their face, but to help grow the sport so that everybody can be involved and doesn't just serve the national development teams. I mean, we're giving the pedestal to these 20 kids every single year. The success, the prowess, the best of the best. They've done everything and anything they can do to wear the national flag on their jersey. And we're focusing on those 20 instead of the potential of millions and growing the sport participation wise.
I have long felt.
How do we fix that model, Mike?
I have long felt that these elite programs, whether it be the World Juniors, the Olympics, whether the World Cup, whatever the case may be, those programs should actually not fall under the Hockey Canada umbrella. They should fall under the Canadian Hockey League. They're the ones that should organize the World Juniors. When it comes to the World Cup of Hockey, it's the National Hockey League. The Hockey Canada, the IIHF really should have nothing to do with it. I know that, there's countries involved, but when it comes to Hockey Canada, specifically, I have felt that their mandate should be to grow the game. And you're not growing the game by focusing on World Juniors and these elite programs that if Hockey Canada just said, well, you know what, we're not going to do them anymore, somebody else would. Like, it's not like if Hockey Canada said, well, we're just not going to be involved in the World Juniors. We're not going to do that anymore. I mean, do you really think that would die, or do you think the Canadian Hockey League or the NHL would pick up the ball on that? But there's too much money at stake. I think I told you before we went into the live recording, the city of Regina paid, I don't know how many thousands of dollars just to apply to see if they could host the World Juniors. They were unsuccessful, but where did that money go? I mean, I can't say specifically, but I got a pretty good idea where that money goes, and it doesn't go back to the people that put the bid in, right? And so when it comes to Hockey Canada, I would really like to see their mandate be grassroots and more around the lines of recreation. And what I mean by that specifically is, you know, people that struggle with their finances, they can't play hockey. I see it in my city of Yorkton. I see the numbers of people that play soccer in my city compared to the number of people that play hockey, not even close. And there's a number of reasons for that. Number one would be cost. Number two would be ethnic background. And, you know, you think that I'm the last person to start talking about ethnic backgrounds and all inclusive and stuff like that. But it's the truth. If you look at, you know, the people that are playing hockey, and you know, something that's a little closer to me is I'll watch, you know, a lot of really talented First Nations people play hockey, but a lot of those First Nations people are financially challenged. And then when they reach a certain point, they just can't play anymore. And so Hockey Canada's mandate should be on ensuring that some of those people can still get through the system and enjoy our game. And, you know, and as I said to you off camera before we got started, you know, the cost of skates, the cost of sticks, the cost of equipment doesn't need to be as high as it is. The reason why it's that high is because the manufacturers know that they can get away with charging it because the people that are playing can afford it. I think if we pointed out, and if we did a better job at pointing out that your $20 stick for 99% of us is going to do the same thing as that $200 stick, why aren't we promoting that? Why aren't we, you know, why don't we have more programs that allow the underprivileged to play? And I know that there are some programs. I know that there's kids sport, and I know that there's some programs out there, but there's not enough. This game is expensive. And if you look at, you know, the guys that are drafted in the NHL, how many of them, like, you don't hear any stories about, oh, geez, here's this guy, and, you know, he comes from a really tough background, like you maybe hear in the NFL or the NBA. Even the NBA, you don't hear as much about that anymore. But in other sports, you know, you certainly hear these stories of how, you know, someone has sort of come through a tough neighborhood, persevered, and made it all the way. You don't, you know, you used to hear that 50 years ago in hockey, but you don't hear that anymore. And I'd like to see Hockey Canada be focused more on getting, and I, you know, look at the numbers. The registration numbers right across the country are down. And the reason why they're down is because people can't afford it. And the new people that come to this country don't know the game. They're not being introduced to the game. They're not being educated on our game, and they're not playing our game. And most of the people that come to Canada, whether they, you know, in my area, there are, you know, a lot of Filipino people, some East Indians, people from Jamaica, Nigeria. These are not hockey playing countries, but they love sports. They, you know, don't kid yourself. They love sports. You know, my son just went through high school, and, you know, half the team on his high school basketball group were made up of Filipino boys. So they love sports, but we're not showing them our game. We're not teaching them we're not welcoming enough in our game. And that's where I'd like to see Hockey Canada start to focus, is more on grassroots recreation and grow the game. We're not growing the game by promoting World Juniors. I don't think that gets a single person to play. And in fact, I think, you know, for me anyway, when I watch World Juniors, I think, oh my gosh, what does it cost a family of 4 to go to Finland over Christmas and watch their son play hockey?
The mandate of Hockey Canada should be exactly that, regarding participation, grassroots, and getting the numbers involved. I couldn't agree with you more, Mike. And the World Juniors will continue regardless. I don't think it's something that, I think USA Hockey does a very good job controlling what they can, but also growing the sport as we've seen it in different areas of the United States. But hockey's not something that needs to be done on an elitist level. It needs to be
No.
brought in from the younger group. Here is the opportunity to look at what a skate is. Here is what a stick does. Here's the different types of scoring apparatus. Here's the positional play. And like you said, kids love sport. They gravitate towards playing with friends, like-minded people, but like-minded people shouldn't have a $ times 4 behind it because they can't, quote unquote, fit in or be a part of that hockey team because of finances. That's why, like soccer, recreational sport, participation of sport needs to be the mandate of Hockey Canada. Couldn't agree with you more, Mike. Let's take a quick break. Let's talk about the World Junior aspect of it again a little more, but also on the other side of the coin, because Hockey Canada doesn't just represent the male game, it also represents the female game. So let's take a quick break. We'll be back here on the ice. Back here on the ice with Mike Stackhouse. Mike, we talked a lot about the male game, the allegations that have gone on here 2003, 2018. Hockey Canada, do they need a clean slate from top to bottom? Do they need to clean house? And what is your view on moving forward with the male and the female game representing this nation of ours?
Well, I think, again, I think Hockey Canada, I think, what I said to close out the last segment, I think it needs to be focused more on recreation and grassroots. I mean, the more people that play, the cream will always rise to the crop, or the cream will always rise to the top, based on the numbers of people that play. And, you can see that in soccer. I mean, Canada's not winning World Cups in soccer, but we're certainly a far better nation in soccer than we used to be. Basketball, most definitely so.
Side at the Olympics.
Well, right.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, and basketball for sure. We're a lot better than we used to be.
20 years ago. You're seeing
Right.
National Basketball Association players. You're looking at Canadian players being drafted in the top 10 where you never even heard of that 20 years ago. I totally agree.
Right. Yeah. So I think, that's where I'd like to see it go. And that's ultimately how we ended up with where we are in the female game, was we just got girls playing. Right. That was where we started. We just said, let's get these girls playing. And then we've got lots of girls playing, lots of really good, female hockey players. And now we've got a really good elite, program, senior and junior and, all age levels when it comes to the girls. I think the one thing that I would like to caution viewers on, and I look at this, behavior in sports, because this isn't isolated to hockey. Hockey's getting a lot of attention right now. But don't kid yourself. This happens in football, it happens in basketball, it happens in baseball, it happens in all these sports. It is what it is. And we don't like to hear about it, and we don't like to talk about it. But this type of behavior goes on in all of these sports. But it also goes on when the shoe's on the other foot. Let's be honest. You get a group of guys sitting around and they're watching university volleyball. You don't think they're talking about how these girls look? Of course they do, right? Of course they do. And you don't think these players, whether they be female basketball players, female hockey players, female volleyball players, whatever the case may be, you don't think that they don't like the attention the same way that the junior hockey players on the men's side like the attention? Of course they do. And, I compare it to rock bands. And I used to, you'd hear stories I go back to my hair band days with, Vixen was the all female band, and Lita Ford and Madonna and some of these people, and the stories that they tell with regards to some of the behavior that they engaged in, it dwarfs some of what we hear with the men. And it's not for me to blow whistles on anybody, but I've been around female hockey players my age, and I can tell you, I found it funny because there was this, the national female team issued a statement today saying that, they would, they hope that there's a thorough investigation and they want to see everything cleaned up. And I hope they mean that sincerely, and I hope they mean that on the female side as well.
Yeah, it's there's certainly a platform that's been developed for all female sport to grow, and I think that's been, very dividend on what we're seeing on the soccer field, what we're seeing in hockey, what we're seeing with, the growth of the sport because there's more participants. Absolutely.
Here's the tough part for a guy like me. The tough part for a guy like me is I'm media, I'm not a player. So I become aware of some things that go on, and I think, holy cow, people got to know about this. We got to put a stop to it. But if I do that, it's not me that has to stand behind my words, really. I can just throw it out there, and I can say, well, he or she said such and such and such and such, go talk to them. And even though I know that my source is good, the he and the she that I'm pointing out may not be comfortable speaking. So as media people, that's the reason why a lot of us are quiet, is because we don't want to put somebody on the spot that doesn't necessarily want to be on the spot. And I always said to people whenever I got these stories, is I said, you know what, if you're willing to stand behind it, even if you don't want to use your name, let me know and I will stand behind it. And I think, about 15 or so years ago with the hazing in Neepawa, I got out in front of that, and I was in front of about 6 or 7 players that didn't want to be identified, and I fronted them on that. And I would do that for anybody that felt like they were victimized and wanted to get their story out there. But at the same time, for me to come on here and say, well, I know this story, that story, and the other story, I do. And do I know some stories that probably should be made public? I do. But do those victims want those stories public? Unless they tell me that they do, I'm not going to air that dirty laundry. But I think that there is a lot of people that need to be very careful about what they hope comes out of these investigations. And it's why too, I also wrote about, these public statements is very weird to me. Like, and I understand, there's guys that want to clear their name. You get somebody that says, hey, I wasn't involved with this. I want to make sure I get a statement out there, and I want to make sure it's a nice, clean, statement that absolves me of any wrongdoing. Well, that's great. But, you're in the event that these guys are found innocent, you've thrown them under the bus by kind of indirectly identifying them. So you're not really in a favorable light there. The other thing is in the event that it's uncovered that, okay, you weren't there, but you did know about it and you didn't say anything, and now you're coming out with this, super clean statement, it'll backfire. So I don't really understand these agents and these players that are quick to come up with these statements. For me, you know what? If you're not guilty and you truly knew nothing about it, no comment. You don't owe anybody anything as far as an explanation goes. And if someone comes at you hard and says, "Well, hey, what do you know about it?" You just say, "You know what? Let the investigation uncover what it uncovers. I'm comfortable with where I stand on things."
Absolutely.
That's all you need to say.
And that's what's being done, well, not being done, but it should be done. I mean,
Yeah.
those 2 words, and because investigations are going on currently with both matters, we can't, and nor are we going to speculate on that matter at all. We're going to move forward a little bit, Mike. I'm going to ask you this question because we have World Juniors happening in August in Edmonton. Do you think, in light of everything that's happened over here in the last little bit, in the last couple of months, Do you think players will sacrifice 7 or 8 games to play for their nation and to be under scrutiny furthermore, as opposed to maybe saying, I don't really need to do this right now. I know where I am. I'm a first round draft pick. I've been drafted to the NHL for my next step professionally. I really don't need to put myself in a position to be considered part of it. I've been invited. I knew I would make it personally. And you know what? I'm just going to say I'm okay where I'm at because I want to focus on my own camp upcoming September. What are your thoughts on that?
If it was me, and if I was a hot shot prospect, I would not play. And the reasons are plentiful. First of all, you can say, you know what? There's a lot of uncertainty, and in fact, I'm kind of surprised that they're going ahead with this at this point. But you know, you could say I'm unsure of the culture, and I don't know that I want to be a part of that right now. That's number one. Number two, I'm not really sure that I would trust Hockey Canada to have my back in the event that something comes up, because here we are, like, it's 2022. Hockey Canada now, and I think in an effort to look good to sponsors, have said, hey, we heard a rumor about 2003 last week. Do you want to look into that? I mean, come on. Like, you know, like, so for the guys that were involved in 2000, that are not, they're not involved, the guys that were on that team in 2003 that legitimately had nothing to do with the incident in question, it's too late. They've already been painted with a horrible brush by their own governing body. Yeah. So no. So for the, you know, for those reasons as well, I wouldn't want to go. You also look at, you know, it's August. So if you get hurt, you're going to miss the first however long it's going to be for the upcoming season, as opposed to have already played part of the year and given the scouts a little bit of, you know, a sample of what you might be capable of doing. So the injury risk for me is a little greater now, because if you get hurt, you're going to miss, you know, depending on the injury, you could miss training camp and the early going of the season. And it's a lot harder to be dropped into the middle of the season when everybody else has been going for 3 months and you haven't been going at all. A little bit harder to you know, to get up to speed, if you will. So I would not play.
Do you think they should have even continued with this announcement in
no,
August? You should have started
no,
and said, you know what,
no,
back in December and be done with it. I mean,
no. And again, it's money.
Of course.
It's money. And that is my entire problem with Hockey Canada, is it should be, you know, and I know everybody wants to make money, but for the most part, it should be, you know, set up as a, you know, I don't want to say nonprofit, because I think they should make money. I'm not saying they shouldn't make money, but it's to the point where the greed it's gluttonous and it's wrong.
I mean, if Hockey Canada were to go back to a grassroots effort and allow the CHL to take over what should be the World Junior programming in all three leagues there, we know that the money that is spent in the CHL is large. I don't know what the number is, but it's large. But wouldn't it be more beneficial to show the junior program to have that better understanding and more of a development and, you know, better link to providing a World Junior program, as opposed to Hockey Canada reassessing their mandate and making sure it's something as a sport for all versus taking the best of the best playing at 17 to 19 years old in the CHL?
I would even say, as far as the CHL taking it over, I think it's almost crucial that they take it over at this point. Hockey and all sports in this country have been damaged, maybe irreparably, by this pandemic, because we're not a sports-loving country. So attendance is down everywhere, and we can do an entirely different show as to why attendance is down. But part of the reason why attendance is down is because people found other things to do. And these junior teams need fans to go to their games to survive. And if the Canadian Hockey League took over the World Juniors and marketed it properly, so that when Connor Bedard is playing in the World Juniors, and it's beat over your head 35,000 times that he plays for the Regina Pats, you might go and watch.
Speaking on that real quick, I know we could probably do another show. We'll get to the last part real quick, Mike. But, as Canadians, do we look at professional sports as being the A-list, the cream of the crop? We have 6 NHL teams. We have 1 in the NBA, 1 in the Major League. We have 0 NFL teams, of course. We have our own CFL, as many people will love and adore the CFL game over the NFL game. I'm not going to go down that road. But when you consider the fact that athletes still have to follow certain bans or certain travel requirements to play, do they really even – does that make Canada like a type A, B, as opposed to an A-plus program? I mean, we're looking at players that have said in recent NHL moves, going to play closer to family, going to be back in the States. There are Americans versus Canadians. The Blue Jays are playing the Cardinals for a couple of games. That's 2 games out of 162 where you see 2 of their all-stars not playing and dressed for the Cardinals against the Blue Jays in Toronto. Does that need to change again? Or is it something where, as Canadians, we don't really care because we found, like you said, other things to do?
Well, I think by and large, as Canadians, we don't care. I don't think we have any sympathy for Nolan Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt not coming to Toronto to play hockey. We don't care, right? We don't care. And that's fine. You cannot care if that's what you want. But I would say this, and I don't know why Matthew Tkachuk and Johnny Gaudreau wanted it at Calgary. Who knows? But I can tell you that if I was not a Canadian citizen and I had a choice to work in Canada or the United States, I would not choose Canada. And the weather has nothing to do with it. If you might freeze my bank account, right? Or you're going to force me to vaccinate my kids when I don't think that they need to get vaccinated, or they can't play minor sports unless they get a vaccine. And I know that there's some kooky American states too, but the reality is that in the States, there are still places that you can go and live a real normal life, Florida being one of them. Whereas in Canada, it's pretty uniform. All the provinces are right in order with the federal government. I don't care if, and this isn't a liberal conservative thing. This is a government thing where, as a country, we feel a particular way. Now, in the States, their federal government may be in line with a lot of our federal government policies, but there's just too many states that aren't. And so if you want to play in Florida, or if you want to, play in North Carolina or some of these other places that are a little bit more loose with how they do things, you're going to do that. And I really believe, more than anything, it's not talked about, but the freezing of bank accounts scares the bejeepers out of people with money, right? Because if you're making $9-10 million a year, it's not under your bed, it's in a bank. And you want to make sure that you're not in Canada, because you don't know, even if you're playing in Canada and it's in an American bank. I mean, who the heck knows, right? Like, and we've done some really weird things, and the reality is that the population who lives here, by and large, is okay with it. We're okay. I'm not okay with it, but by and large, we're okay with it. And because we're okay with it, I think you've got some people, and you talk to people that aren't from Canada. You ask them what their opinion is of us now compared to 5 years ago. It's not the same. It's not. And and I know we're into the final remarks portion of it, but look at flying, right? If you're Johnny Gaudreau and Matthew Tkachuk, and you want to fly your family in to visit you, and then wherever you want to go back to wherever you came from, if you've got to go through Pearson, good luck. Good luck.
We saw Whitney and Spit and Chicklets doing
right.
that a month ago, and they got stuck heavy core, yeah.
And so we have a lot of issues in this country that I talked about 2 years ago, and everyone said I was a moron, but they're starting to come to roost now. And Johnny Gaudreau and Matthew Tkachuk, are they ever going to have to worry about a shortage of food? No. But the fact that we're talking about food shortages in Canada and doing it on purpose, that scares any person with common sense that doesn't have to be here.
Absolutely. We've gone full circle, Mike, and I really appreciate it. Hockey Canada, we both agree about making it a grassroots participation program. Love to hear some ideas, perhaps later on, from others on whether or not the CHL could make it and market it more effectively. We both agree there shouldn't be a World Juniors in August, but we know why. We both agree on number one reason why.
Yeah.
And we look forward to seeing a good junior hockey season come the fall. Does that sound about right?
Yeah. And I think the other thing I would just close on this, with your viewers, if you like sports, and I've learned this in the last 2 years, if you like sports, you can find a love of a game just about anywhere. I love the Canadian Elite Basketball League. I follow it every single day. I love the National Lacrosse League. I had season tickets to the Rush. I followed it every single weekend. It's no secret I'm a big Junior A hockey fan. I didn't go to as many games this year, but I most years I go to dozens and dozens and dozens of Junior A games, all across the prairies, and I go just for pure enjoyment. So even if you are in this situation where you're like, the Jets are too much money, or the Blue Bombers are too much money, you've got junior football, you've got university football, you get university hockey, you've got junior hockey. I mean, you've got all these other things that don't cost that much money. And quite frankly, if you open your mind a little bit and just be a bit receptive to them, you can be entertained pretty much just as well by watching some of these other leagues that aren't necessarily publicized on the national scale like we're used to.
Mike Stackhouse, you can find the 10 weekend thoughts. Is that what we call it still? Or the 10 thoughts?
My arrangement with Rod is I write 10 thoughts whenever I have time. So it usually works out to somewhere around once a week, but no guarantee on the day. And
the last couple of weeks have been not only entertaining, but very informative. A lot of Saskatchewan and Winnipeg-based stuff, but nonetheless, a little more national coverage on that past show. I really appreciate it, Mike, your time, your efforts, and I hope that a lot of this corrects and rectifies an opportunity for a better, more shining light for the future for young kids that want to get involved in this sport.
It can be fun, right? And that's, I think, what a lot of people don't, they lose in all this. It can be a lot of fun, and you can hang out with your friends, and you can do some things with your friends that, maybe some other people over here, sort of question and don't necessarily view as fun. But make sure that the people that you're doing with agree that if you think it's fun, make sure that they think it's fun too. And as long as everybody's on the same page with that, there's you can still do some of these things that teenagers have always done, but just make sure that everybody's having fun and not just some of you.
Great way to sum it up, Mike. I can't do it any better. Thank you, my friend. Yeah. Mike Stackhouse with us here on tonight's show on the ice. I'd like to thank our sponsors once again, Doak Spoke Fields, Case Financial Group, Toby Hockey, and Pilot Mountain Hockey Academy. We'll be back later on this week for another great show here on the ice, bringing more goodness to the greatness here on ASTV. Have a great rest of the evening, everybody. Take care, and again, really appreciate you listening and watching in on tonight's episode. I know it was a little bit difficult one, but we do hope that it shines a light and gets a better future here for everyone involved in hockey and sport in this nation. Take care and have a great evening. Bye-bye for now.
Welcome to Pilot Mountain Hockey Academy, your world-class academic and hockey training facility created to maximize each student's athletic and academic potential. Blackjack Stewart Arena, home of the Buffalo, is inside the 46,000 square foot complex, as well as a curling rink and other facilities. The students have a unique combination of successful, well-rounded education at Pilot Mountain Collegiate Institute and the professional hockey training in an encouraging community. The years of experience of on-ice coaching propel our students to the next level, both mentally and physically, in a professional environment.